But it just shows what a pickle sometimes Prince Andrew gets himself in by his choice of friends. Obviously, we know most notably with Jeffrey Epstein, and he said at that stage, even said afterwards, he wished he'd been a bit more circumspect in his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But it does show that he is, and as your previous correspondent said, the fact that he is susceptible and vulnerable, he does need to somehow pay his way. He is now living in Royal Lodge, which he says he can fund, but what people are trying to work out, where's he getting these funds from? But by all accounts, it's been verified it's come from a bona fide source. But for Prince Andrew, this once again throws on the spotlight of his choice of friends. And he's had throughout his career, when he was the trade envoy, the allegations of some of the people that he was mixing with was certainly causing him problems and throughout his career. And this is just another part of the problems that he has faced. And it obviously shows that he has to somehow be a little bit more clever in the way he picks his friends.
And the Times is reporting that the King's actually been briefed by MI5 over these links, which in itself, I mean, just within a family dynamic is awkward. You add the royal family into that, it's even more.
Yes, and bearing in mind there's going to be 45 for Christmas, and one of them there'll be a lot of people looking at once again, suggesting, what's he gone and done now? So it is not easy for the King, because his brother, he tried to persuade him to move out of Royal Lodge, but that hasn't happened because he's proved that he can live there. So he's permanently causing the King a bit of a headache when he can probably do without it with all the other stuff that's going on, not in his own life, let alone with what his younger brother is doing. And the fact is that he has been briefed shows that they're taking it very seriously indeed, these allegations against this 50-year-old Chinese businessman who is yet to be named, although there is speculation, people are calling for this person to be named, that it might be revealed later on in the week. But at the moment, he remains anonymous. But for the King to be briefed suggests that this is a very serious breach, although, as Prince Andrew has said, nothing was passed on.
I find this staggering. The Telegraph is reporting this morning that Buckingham Palace has no way of scrutinising the Duke's finances, including the monies used for the upkeep of the Royal Lodge. A source said no power, authority or legal right to do so, and that the palace just has to seek assurances from the Duke that the money is legitimately earned. I mean, that just sounds bonkers to anybody on the outside.
It does, and particularly when, that something like this is suggesting that sometimes his choice of friends and where he's getting his money from, maybe in consultancy role. And once he gave up being the trade envoy, he, of course, was continuing. He was still a member of the royal family until 2019, up until that disastrous TV interview. He was obviously trying to find funds. What's he doing with his time in the Royal Lodge? So there are question marks because, to live in the Royal Lodge is a hugely expensive place, and he has to be responsible for its upkeep. I mean, most sane people would say perhaps it would be to downsize, but the one thing about Prince Andrew, he is definitely one who's convinced of his rightness most of the time, and that's what gets him in such hot water. He's not one who's able to read the room very well, and that's why over the years he's found himself in various difficult situations.
So is that arrogance? Is that not listening to people, or is it having just people around him who are giving him bad advice?
He is I think arrogance is probably his biggest problem, and he may not be the brightest tool in the box either. So we put the two together, and that is one of the problems that he is faced with. So as a result, his ability to see through people, he likes people around him who are, in as many sense, yes men, who will do his bidding. And so that has been part of the problem as well. And he has caused himself more grief by not actually just pausing and taking stock and actually looking outside at the big picture, because he is definitely giving the royal family and the King a bit of a headache at the moment.
Thank you so much, Rupert. That is royal correspondent Rupert Bell. You can read plenty more on this story inside the Times. It's on the front page and then goes inside as well. Lots more detail on these links between Prince Andrew and, as Rupert rightly points out, this currently unnamed Chinese businessman. But there is a lot of pressure for this businessman to be named. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. But if you've got a digital subscription, you can head online now to thetimes.com.
First thing you say to Prince Andrew when he shows up for Christmas dinner?
Quiet year.
Don't worry, Andy. We're not going to talk about anything sensitive over lunch. You can tell who you like. You can WhatsApp 0333 003 2353. Fresh from Panama and wrestling through the cyclone of chairs in the studio. It's Jane Mulkerrins.
It is like it's like some sort of train station waiting room.
We've got
here today,
7
isn't it?
chairs.
Seven
There's only
chairs.
3 of us.
I mean, maybe there's a pantomime in that.
And also, just to be clear for our listeners, this is not a big studio.
It's really not.
It's even smaller now. Hi, Jane. Welcome back.
Thanks very much.
Lovely to see you.
Thank
What
you.
are you up to on the radio from 10 o'clock?
So I've got Alice Denby of City AM fame and the comedian Gráinne Maguire to join me to talk through the issues of the week. We're going to be talking about not Chinese spies, but whether there's a North Korean spy in your IT department at work.
Well, if there's one in mine, there's one in yours.
And whether you'd even know, to be honest, sometimes.
Yeah.
I will
They rarely
be-
show up to fix anything, let's be real.
Well,
anyway,
exactly.
go on.
I will be talking to Elliot Mintz, who has written this brilliant book about his long and very intense friendship with John Lennon and Yoko Ono. He was incredibly close friends with John and Yoko in the 70s and was the first person who sort of flew to New York to comfort her after John was murdered. He's nearly 80 and he's sort of written this incredible book recounting their stories. I'll be talking to him. I'll be talking to Edmund Bauer, who is in Syria for the Times, who's written that incredible piece today about the evidence, the mass graves around Damascus. I will have an American former inmate who spent 36 years in prison for a murder that he claims he had nothing to do with, along with 7 other people, who's fighting to get a pardon from Joe Biden before Biden leaves office. I'll also be talking to Harry York, the Sunday Times deputy political editor, about all the politics of the day. I'll have Stephen D. Wright talking about telly, including the Elton John documentary on Disney Plus, which I watched this week. And I will have the Sherlocks, the Yorkshire band, playing here in the studio. So maybe that's what the
Maybe
chairs
that's
are
what
for.
the chairs are for.
We're definitely going to have to clear the chairs. If they're performing in here, there'll be no room.
They're going to stand on the chairs,
Cracks
Chloe.
it, yeah,
And I'll
that's
be
right.
on the desk dancing.
Jane Mulkerrins, lovely to see you. Jane's back at 10 o'clock this morning on Times Radio for you with her choice of seats.
Absolutely, yes. We need to move some of
We
these
will,
out. It's
we
getting a
should
bit out of hand. Right, this is Times Radio Breakfast. It's coming up to, 9 minutes to 9. We're going to be discussing in the next few minutes more on reports from Syria, on really the amount of weapons that are in the country and also the role that Russia will play moving forward. There's a lot of military equipment. There's a lot of Russian bases. Quite confusion really over whether they're going to stay, whether they're going to go. We know that there's been Israeli bombing raids. So much to get into. We'll get into all of that in the next few minutes here on Times Radio Breakfast.